There was an old man who lived alone in the middle of a forest. He had 3 loyal hunting dogs to keep him company in the long, lonely nights. Nobody knew his real name, but most folks just called him Smitty. He loved hunting, fishing, and the great outdoors. Years ago, Smitty had quit his job, packed his belongings, and moved out here to a nice little cabin that he built himself way back in the woods. It wasn't very big, but it was just enough for him. The cabin only had 2 rooms. One he used for a bedroom, and the other was a kitchen. He had built himself a nice big open fireplace where he could cook his food and warm his body on the chilly winter nights. He planted himself a nice little vegetable garden by the side of the house, and he would go out every day and hunt rabbits and fish. During the warm months, Smitty had no problem catching as much small game as he needed. But in the colder months, it became a little more difficult to keep his stomach full. One cold winter night, the man went out to his storage shed to see what he could find for dinner. All he found was a small piece of fatty meat and a handful of moldy potatoes. He had to make do with what there was, so he cooked it and gobbled it down. Smitty was still feeling a little hungry, and there wasn't much that he could do about it. So despite the protest of his grumbling stomach, Smitty stoked the fire in the fireplace to keep the cabin warm and went to bed. Just as his eyelids were getting heavy, and he was about to fall asleep, he heard something in the room with him. He opened his eyes, and along the wall crept a shadow. He slipped quietly out of bed and tiptoed into the other room. There he saw the oddest-looking creature that he had ever seen. It was short and stubby, with pointed ears and short, fat feet with long claws, and it had a long, bushy tail. There were no open doors or windows, so Smitty was confused as to how the funny-looking thing even got in. He quietly picked up his axe. Creeping silently over to the odd critter, he brought it down squarely on its big tail. The creature let out a large screech and escaped through a big hole in the wall. The old man was left standing there with his long, bushy tail and a bloody axe clutched in his hand. Smitty was about to throw the old tail out the door when his growling stomach reminded him of how hungry he still was. So he took the tail, cleaned it, and cooked it, and ate it. It really didn't taste that bad, only a little wiry, not a whole lot of meat on it. But with his stomach finally full, Smitty patched up the hole in the wall, went back to his cozy warm bed, and fell asleep. Smitty had just drifted off into a deep sleep when a strange sound awoke in him. It sounded like something was trying to scratch its way into the cabin. The old man knew that if he stayed really quiet, it probably would go away, so he stayed as quiet as he could. But then, he heard a strange hissing noise outside. Taily Bone, Taily Bone, I want my Taily Bone. Smitty thought he must be imagining things, but then he heard it again. Taily Bones, Taily Bones, I want my Taily Bones. Smitty jumped out of bed, flung open the door, and called out to his dogs. They came running, barking, and sniffing around, but they didn't find anything at all. So Smitty put the dogs back outside and went back to bed. Smitty had just found himself falling back to sleep when he heard that voice again. This time the scratching sound, like it was at the window. Whatever it was, it really, really wanted to get in, but the scratching seemed to be on 2 walls at the same time. Smitty called out, Hey, who's that at my door? Get away from me! Then he heard the strange voice again, only this time a little louder. Taily Bones, Taily Bones, where is my Taily Bone. Old Smitty, who wasn't one to frighten easily, was getting a little shaky. This was getting really weird, so he eased at the window and called for his dogs. The 3 dogs bounded up to the porch, and they sniffed around and barked and sniffed, but they never found anything. Nothing at all. Smitty decided to stay up for the rest of the night to protect himself, his dogs, and his little cabin. So he pulled a chair next to the fireplace, grabbed a blanket from his bed, and settled in for the rest of the wind-chilled, wintry night. Sleep soon overtook him, and once again, he dozed off. It was almost dawn when Smitty woke with a start. The sound of scratching seemed to reverberate from every area of the cabin. Smitty searched frantically for his axe, his rifle, or something to defend himself with, but he was so frightened that he couldn't find anything. The scratching grew louder and louder and louder. Taily Bones. Taily Bones. Give me back my Taily Bones. Smitty yelled back, "Leave me alone! I don't have your Taily Bones!" Then he called for his dogs. But this time, the dogs didn't come. He waited and waited, but still, not one dog came running. Smitty had never been so scared in his life. He ran to his bed and jumped in. The scratching and the voice grew louder and louder and louder. Taily Bones, Taily Bones, give me back my Taily Bones. Smitty yelled back as loud as he could, "I don't have them, so why don't you leave me alone and go on about your business? I never hurt anybody!" Scratching seemed to be inside the house now, and the voice was so loud it was deafening. Taily Bones, Taily Bones, you took my Taily Bones. Now I'm back to get it. Give it to me now! Smitty pulled the covers up over his head and stayed as quiet as he could, but the scratching was down his room. Taily Bones, Taily Bones, you'd better give me back my Taily Bones. Smitty then felt the thing scratching up the bottom of his bed onto the covers. Smitty eased the covers down to see what was steadily approaching, and then he saw it. A short, stubby creature with pointed ears, fat feet, and long claws, and bloodshot, red eyes that glowed in the dark, eyes that seemed to burn straight through Smitty. Before he could pull the covers up over his head again, the thing pounced on his chest, looked straight down at him, and said, "I've got my Taily Bones, and you better give it back to me now!" Smitty yelled, "I ate it! I ate your Taily Bones! It's gone!" I know. Smitty's screams echoed throughout the dark mountains, and then stopped, leaving a chilling silence. After a month or two, without hearing from Smitty, the folks who owned the store at the base of the mountain went up to his cabin to make sure everything was all right. When they got there, they found the cabin torn to shreds, but no signs of Smitty or his dogs. They searched the woods, they called for him, but they never found a thing. As the search party was heading down the mountain, the winter wind began to blow, and a strange voice could be heard. Taily Bone, Taily Bones, I've got my Taily Bones.